Hello, good morning and welcome to Business 360. My name is Blyden Ukem. On Business 360 this morning, Iran mediators make last-ditch push for 45-day ceasefire. We begin from there. The US, Iran and a group of regional mediators are discussing the terms for a potential 45-day ceasefire that could lead to a permanent end to the war. Axios reported on Sunday cited 4 US, Israeli and regional sources with knowledge of the talks. The mediator discussing the terms of two-phase deal, the report said, adding that the first phase would be a potential 45-day ceasefire, during which a permanent end to the war would be negotiated. The second phase would be an agreement on ending the war. The ceasefire could be extended if additional time was required for talks, the report stated. US President Donald Trump told the Wall Street Journal on Sunday his deadline for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz or face attacks on critical infrastructure is Tuesday evening. And now to the oil sector. OPEC Plus agreed on Sunday to raise its oil output quotas by 206,000 barrels per day for May, a modest rise that will largely exist on paper as is with Iran. The war has effectively shut the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most important oil route, since the end of February, and cut export from OPEC Plus members Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait and Iraq, the only countries in the group which were able to significantly raise production even before the conflict began. Crude prices have surged to a 4-year high, close to $120 a barrel, translating into soaring prices for transport fuels, which are pressuring consumers and businesses across the globe and triggering government action to conserve supplies. The OPEC Plus quota increase of 206,000 barrels per day represents less than 2% of the supply disrupted by the Hormuz closure, but it signals readiness to raise output once the waterway reopens, according to OPEC Plus sources. In Africa, Senegal has imposed an immediate ban on non-essential foreign travel for government ministers as rising global oil prices place mounting pressure on public finances, according to Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko. Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko says crude prices are nearing double the budget benchmark, forcing urgent fiscal adjustments. The move reflects a broader African response, with countries adopting measures to manage fuel costs and energy shortages. Experts warn that disruption to global supply chains could worsen food security, especially in vulnerable regions. And now to the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Democratic Republic of Congo has announced plans to begin hosting third country nationals transferred under the United States migration arrangement, marking the latest African country to engage with Washington's expanding deportation strategy. The initiative is described as temporary, with no permanent resettlement options and full respect for DRC's sovereignty. The U.S. will manage all financial logistical aspects, and each case will be reviewed individually under Congolese law. This move follows a similar arrangement in other African countries such as Uganda, reflecting the U.S. broader deportation strategy. Only 7 Africa's 52 scheduled airlines are fully operational, with just one turning a profit. The Chief Executive Officer of the Airline Association of Southern Africa, Aaron Munetsi, has warned. Munetsi raised the alarm over the fragile state of airline operations across the continent, revealing that only one airline in Africa is currently profitable. Munetsi made this disclosure during the Nigerian Aircraft Acquisition and Investment Summit held in Lagos, where he painted a grim picture of Africa's aviation landscape. He expressed concern about the slow pace of aircraft acquisition and the continent's inability to leverage its vast population and geographic scale to build a competitive aviation sector. Munetsi further highlighted the stark disparity between Africa and more developed aviation markets, noting that the entire fleet of African airlines estimated at about 1,000 aircraft falls short compared to Delta Airlines, which operates roughly 1,500 aircraft. With a population of about 1.4 billion people, the continent contributes just 2% to global aviation. This is not commensurate with the size of the, he says. In Nigeria, organized labor have renewed calls for increased crude supply and lower fuel prices following confirmation that Nigeria's oil production has risen to about 1.8 million barrels per day, saying higher output should translate into improved feedstock availability for domestic refineries and relief for consumers. The spokesperson for the Crude Oil Refiners Association of Nigeria, Eche Idoko, declared that refiners would intensify demand for more crude with a reported improvement in national production. Idoko said he read a report that the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited was planning to increase crude supply to the Dangote refinery in Lagos from 5 to 7 cargoes. While commending the decision, he noted that 7 is still low compared to what the refinery needs for daily production. According to reports, the NUPRC said daily oil produced 8 million barrels per day, adding that it was eyeing 2 million barrels per day. Still in Nigeria, the federal government has signaled its intention to work collaboratively with the private sector and key stakeholders towards the establishment of a cybersecurity coordination council. This initiative is aimed at strengthening Nigeria's collective cyber reliance and the resilience and enhancing coordinated response to evolving cyber threats across both the public and private sectors. The plan announced by the Minister of Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy, Dr. Busan Tijani, underscores a broader policy direction centered on partnership and shared responsibility. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, NDPC, has confirmed that it's carrying out an ongoing investigation across the data protection ecosystem in line with its statutory mandate. A statement by Babatunde Bamiboye, Head Legal Enforcement and Regulation, said the agency is probing the alleged data breach involving Remita Payment Systems Limited and Sterling Bank and other entities. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has announced a plan to offset 3.3 trillion naira power sector legacy debt owed to electricity generation companies. A statement released on Sunday by presidential spokesperson Bayo Naloga said the 3.3 trillion naira approved payment plan followed a due verification of the country's power sector legacy debt, which has lasted for more than a decade. Implementation has begun with 15 power plants signing settlement agreement totaling 2.3 trillion naira. The federal government has already raised 501 billion naira via bond to fund these payments. Out of the amount, 223 billion naira has been disbursed, with further payments underway. However, the Association of Power Generation Companies has kicked against the development, saying the federal government slashed the legacy debt from 6 trillion naira to 3.3 trillion naira. Reacting to the plan to offset the 3.3 trillion naira debt, Chief Officer of the Association, Dr. Joy Ogaji, asks, is verification unilateral in a bilateral agreement? He asked, and I quote, exactly, we don't have the answers to these questions. Still in Nigeria, the Nigerian government has announced that 2 firms have secured a combined 9 billion naira financing for mini-grid deployment in 4 states. A rural electrification agency disclosed this in a statement. According to the Rural Electrification Agency, the firms got 7.95 billion naira and 1.056 billion naira for the mini-grid projects across different areas in Taraba, Kwara, Kogi, and Niger State. These allocations followed recent announcement of 7.4 billion naira and 3.2 billion naira in financing for 2 power firms. The facility is backed by the federal government distributed access through Renewable Energy Scale-Up and there's Programs Performance-Based Grants, PGB, 100 billion naira in finance funding with a Nigerian bank. Commenting on the development, the Managing Director, Dr. Abba Aliyu, lauded the consistent capital injection into Nigeria's renewable energy sector. And now we'll go on a quick break, and when we're back, Business 360 continues as you're looking at different contexts from a Nigerian point of view alongside global economic outlook and the markets. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. It's your Business 360, and my name is Platinum. As seen from a Nigerian's perspective, the federal government hikes 2026 borrowing plan by 11 trillion naira. The federal government has increased its borrowing plan for 2026 to 29.2 trillion naira, following an expansion in the proposed budget size, according to official documents. The figure represents an increase of 11.31 trillion naira when compared with the earlier 17.89 trillion naira borrowing projection contained in the 2026 Abridged Budget Call Circular issued by the Federal Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning. The new borrowing structure estimate is contained in the 2026 Appropriation Bill approved by the National Assembly and detailed in the House of Representatives, order a paper dated Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, as well as in a budget scheduled attached to the proposal. The expansion is driven by a widening fiscal deficit, with total spending estimated at 68.32 trillion naira and aggregate revenues projected at 36.87 trillion naira, and leaving a deficit of 31.46 trillion naira. Now, up next, it's Global Economic Outlook. We'll look at Spain's unemployment unexpected fall as the unemployment rate unexpectedly falls. A Global Economic Outlook next. And as a global economic outlook around the world, looking at perspective around the world, we begin with Spain as unemployment rates unexpectedly falls. The number of people registering as jobless in Spain fell by 22,934 from the previous month to 2.42 million in March 2026, compared with market expectations of a 10,300 increase. Unemployment decreased across services, construction, and industries. On the other hand, unemployment rose in agriculture, a positive 365. Youth unemployment fell by 431 to 188,977, the lowest figure ever recorded in March. The largest decreases in unemployment were registered in Andalusia, a negative 8,836, Catalonia, a negative 3,777, and Valencian Community, a negative 2,467. And now to Egypt. Egypt has raised electricity prices for high-use household and commercial users from April as authorities respond to a worsening global energy crisis tied to the Middle East conflicts. The move is part of broader efforts to curb consumption and ease mounting fiscal pressure from rising fuel import costs. The Electricity Ministry said lower-income households would be protected with no changes for residential usage of up to 2,000 kilowatt-hour per month. In contrast, a tariff for higher consumption households will rise by an average of 16%, while commercial electricity prices across all brackets will increase by about 20%. Officials trace the targeted approach aims to balance cost pressures while maintaining a stable power supply across residential, commercial, and industrial sectors. Up next would be the markets. We'll look at FX updates and also look at the commodity market. Up next, the markets. And back to market outlook, we begin with FX update as South Korean won increases by 0.41%. Let's begin with the top currency gainers. The top currency gainers are South Korean won 0.41%, a Swedish krona 0.34%, Mexican peso 0.33%, the dollar index 0.08%, and the euro 0.07%. The biggest loser in the FX market is Indian rupee falling a negative 0.38%. Meanwhile, Japanese yen and British pound were little changed in the market. Well, similarly, let's look at for the markets, the commodity market this morning as oil pairs gain on ceasefire hopes. Oil paired gains on reports that the US, Iran and regional mediators are negotiating terms for a possible 45-day truce that could pave the way for a more permanent end to the conflicts. This followed Trump issuing a fresh ultimatum to Iran and escalating threat against its civilian infrastructure. Now, can we look at the market then? First, the energy market, afterwards the metals and agricultural market, then we'll transit into the FX market proper. The energy market first, afterwards agricultural market now, and we talk about the metal markets and other markets in that regard. We'll get to it for the update that comes from the commodity market. Let's begin with the market proper, the FX market. Afterwards, we'll talk about the commodities. The Euro-USD market first. Afterwards, we'll look at the state of the Naira and the cryptocurrency before talking about the commodities. A Euro-USD market. A Euro-USD market price level stands at 1.155 points mark, which is $1.15 equaling €1. The euro gaining 0.33% over the US dollar, and the pound gaining 0.32% over the US dollar at a price level of $1.32 to £1. The Aussie also gaining 0.54% over the US dollar, and the New Zealand dollar gaining 0.59% over the US dollar. The US dollar seemed to be struggling against the majors. Quickly, let's look at the state of the Naira, the US dollar against the Naira, how the Naira is faring against the US dollar, and afterwards we'll see the state of the cryptocurrency market. While anticipating the state of the Naira, we'll get to talk about the Naira and other commodities afterwards. Let's switch gear and look at the equity market as US futures rise on ceasefire hopes. S&P 500 and Nasdaq 100 futures advance to delay rate cuts and potentially raise borrowing cuts this year if inflation persists. Investors are now looking to the latest Federal Open Market Committee meetings for the further guidance on the central bank's policy outlook. And now let's be back to, before we get to talk about for the market, let's look at the Nigeria's perspective. Let's see in the context of the equity market. NSIA profit plunged 91% as FX windfall evaporates. The Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority recorded a sharp contraction in its bottom line performance for the 2025 fiscal year as a massive foreign exchange gains that boosted its previous year's result failed to repeat. According to the 2025 Special Purpose, a US dollar consolidated and separate financial statement, the authority's profits for the year plummeted to $107 million, representing a 91% drop from the $1.24 billion reported in 2024. The downturn is primarily attributed to the disappearance of the devaluation windfall. In 2025, the NSIA benefited from the $566.9 million of foreign exchange gain driven by the volatility of the Naira. While talking about volatility of the Naira, let's go back to see the price level of the Naira, the US dollar against the Naira, afterward the cryptocurrency and a bit of the African stock market and the commodity market, the US dollar against the Naira. US dollar against the naira price level stands at 1,380 naira, equaling $1. The dollar gaining 0.14% over the naira, while the US dollar against South African rand, the dollar falling against the rand, but it's been a mixed fortune for African currencies. Quickly, let's look at the cryptocurrency market. A crypto market indicates the price of Bitcoin. A Bitcoin price stands at $69,836, gaining 861 points this morning, a 1.25% appreciation. Ether gaining, Binance, Cardano, Solana, Ripple, all gaining. The crypto market seem positive. Let's close with the price of the stock market in Africa, the African stock market. African stock market. And let's close with the price of the energy market then. The energy market, energy commodities amid all that's happening in the world regarding the war between Israel, United States of America, and Iran. The energy market, the price of crude oil price level standing at $110 per barrel, dropping 0.853 points, a negative 0.76%. Brent, which represents Nigeria's price benchmark, our price stands at $107 per bushel, falling 1.264 points, a negative 1.16%. Natural gas, a little here, a little there, gaining slightly, 0.98%. Gasoline dropping, heating oil dropping. The price of coal gaining slightly, 0.51%. And TTF gas also no significant change in the market. It's a multiplicity of thought that comes with the world of business and the different market, from the commodities, in particular the energy market, amid threat from Donald Trump, President of the United States of America, and a possibility of a ceasefire, a 45-day ceasefire between Israel, Iran, and the United States of America. It's a holistic conversation in the world of business, and we draw the curtain here in today's Business 360. Thank you for being a part of it. My name is Bladen Rukim, and thank you for watching.